Welcome back to another episode. If you're new to the channel and you missed part one of this series, just jump back and have a quick look. It's just about unboxing and some of the tools you require for fitting the Zipwake 300S trim tabs. One of the things to consider before purchasing these is to just make sure that you have enough real estate on the back of your transom, and if not, be prepared to sacrifice some because they are 300mm long and they go up in sizes from there. In this video, we're going to have a look at the current setup, some of the things that we've considered moving forward from here, and we're going to install the Zipwake 300S kit. Before we get started on that, we're going to jump through and show you the boat. And if you're new to the channel, this is a Stablecraft 2150 Super Cab. I purchased it from the Northern Territory, met in the middle of Australia to pick this one up. It is the pride and joy, like most people's boats are. We'll have a quick look without further ado and look at the current setup, the way we've got these transducers positioned. Then we'll look at how we're going to move and remount those so that we have enough space for the trim tabs, to where we're looking at putting things in the vessel as well, the control module and the other moving parts.
Big fight, skips, tips as film and we're legends tonight. White hammer rock out on the sea. Big coral trough where the fish run free. Spanish mackerel, flatty dogs in tow. Skips, tips is the channel stealing the show. Chicks in bikinis, sun so hot.
So before we dive into the install itself, which can show you a before and then we can show an after of the product installed. As we mentioned in part one series, we have had no benefits from Zipwake or where we purchased the things from. This is purely an independent install and review. We're not by any means marine mechanics or anything like that. This is a DIY kit, and we're just going to run you through the basics and how easy it is to install this kit on the Stablecraft. With real estate wise, as mentioned before, we are running 3 transducers here purely because over time, as you know, you save up and you buy a bit of kit and you prefer to stick with that. So we've got on this side the GT56, which will stay as is. On the starboard side of the vessel, we've got a Lowrance 3-in-1 transducer. Pretty much only use that just for mapping. I don't ever really use the transducer at all, but it is a good backup to have. And then I've got the Panoptix PS31 transducer, mainly for live scope when we're fishing. So in order to relocate those, we're going to have to pull off the Lowrance 3-in-1 transducer and move it across to the port side and move the Panoptix transducer further into the keel of the vessel. That's going to be the plan first up. One of the things to consider is obviously with any transducers, little side friends, is a lot of people do recommend putting them on the starboard side just from the downwards force of the prop, depending on how your propeller will spin. With this being, it's got the pod on the back of it, it's pretty straightforward. We don't get a lot of interference with the any aeration or anything like that, or we're not seeing that anyway in the past. So it's just a little bit of fiddling around, but we'll jump up and have a bit of a look on what we're sort of planning to do. Turn these guys on. This is another recent project that we did, was put a roof on the back, but that's a whole nother thing. Pretty straightforward. We're just going to remove the 3-in-1 transducer, which I've got running up on this screen up in here, and relocate it to the other side. Unfortunately, it means pulling back all the cabling and run it up the port side of the vessel so that we can have it back the way it is. It's good to have, already paid for it, might as well use it. We're going to run the Interceptor into the control unit. We're going to put it back in next to the kill switch there, just to save that real estate from the helm. And Stablecraft is really good. They label all wiring front and back, so it makes it really easy to know your stuff. If you haven't done that already, it is worth the time doing that. So if you do have a problem, you don't have to chase which wire it is or what fuse it is if you're looking for a particular thing. For the control unit, we're going to mount it straight onto the helm here. We do have enough real estate, as mentioned in part one. You can get a module that pairs up straight through to your sounder. It doesn't affect us. We're happy to run the unit on here, and that's part of the standard kit. So we'll be drilling that one today. That's pretty much it in a wrap. A little bit of stuffing around, as any of this sort of stuff is. Time is money, so let's get into it. Rightio, so we've just pulled off the two transducers, so the Lowrance 3-in-1 and the Panoptics. Basically, from what we can see, we're going to be mounting the trim tabs as far out to the sides as we can. This has got some hydrodynamics in the hull anyway, so this mounting plate's perfectly positioned. We're going to move the Panoptics down into here. It's something that you really don't use too much other than for live scope. It was designed back in the day by Garmin for yachts, basically to sort of detect bommies. It does do a 3-in-1 imaging of the seafloor, but we found just purely because of the positioning of it at the stern, it just doesn't get the results that it would if it was at the front of a vessel, especially if it was mounted on the Minn Kota, which is an optional thing that you can do. You can mount it forward facing on a Minn Kota, but we're not always using that, and generally if we're using the Minn Kota, we're spot locked, so we're only really using the live scope, which it works great at the back anyway. So we're going to mount that fella there, which should leave us at least another 100 on here. We're going to pull this 3-in-1 over to the port side just as a bit of a backup for just 200 hertz, so that's going to be the plan there. Save us a little bit of work. We're going to hopefully squeeze it through this little gap here, and that we're not going to have to deal with the back of the transom pulling that through, because I have Sikaflexed in the inside of that hole there. So we'll probably have to do a little bit of tinkering inside, because I do remember that the length of the cabling was sort of maxed to where it was. So hopefully we don't run into any dramas there, but that's it for now. We're going to keep pulling along, so stay tuned. So we've just mounted the other transducer on the other side, which was actually easier than we thought. We didn't have to pull it all the way through. We're able to slot it up through in here. Just about to mount the Panoptics, just tightening up the existing mount holes, in which we will eventually paint and tidy up everything at the end there, so it looks all good. We're going to put this fella in at the back. It's something that they're a little bit harder to install than a normal sort of transducer for the average Joe bloke, purely just because they're not really designed for its speed. They're more of again, on your trolling motor or something around the like that, but they are a useful tool to have, especially for the live scope. So we're just going to line this one up, mount it, and it's just going to be one of those scenarios we'll have to try it and test it and just see if we're happy with the result. Yeah, so far so good. Make good time. Probably come up a bit, but for the purpose of this, it's the best of both worlds. So we're going to mark the holes just in the center, so we still have adjustment. That's a 4mm. Yeah, happy with 4. Alright, so we've finally relocated the transducers from the port side to starboard side, vice versa, just to create a bit of real estate for the Interceptors to be installed. We'll show you where we're up to and a few of the things that we've considered upon the install. So if we just jump down here and have a quick little look, we've just moved and we're not too sure how this is going to read long term, so it's going to be a little trial and test. But we've just put the GT56 and the 3-in-1 right next to each other like that. I only ever use this guy as a complete backup. It's again really only used for mapping, and you can see sort of backwards, which is great when you're fishing as well. So where it's mounted in the helm, we've measured out, and the templates are really straightforward and easy to follow. They've got obviously the two methods of install, which is the straight through the hull or the concealed cable mount, which you would generally apply through like into a fiberglass boat, or if you didn't have a mounting plate like this one. But in our scenario, we're not going to use that, and it's really straightforward. Six holes. One thing to consider is the straight edge through here, and just allowing no more than 5mm between the Interceptor and the bottom of the hull there, and that's something just straight out of the manual there that we noted. On the other side, it's basically a mirror image of this. We've pushed them out as far as we can. And obviously with the hydrodynamics of the hull design, that actually works really well for us with the way that mounting plate's been designed. So that's going to be really good for the install, about as far out as we could really go, and getting those 6 screws in. One thing we did just have to do is just take the heads off the screws, just purely because we only have about 20mm spacing behind there, and we didn't want them to sort of screw into the hole, although that's 5-6mm plate anyway, but it's just something to consider as well if you are using the stuff that's in the kit. pretty straightforward through here. We just pulled out the 2 holding screws through that thing. This is very complex but simple design. Here's your mounting screws. The interceptor will come out. Sorry, you do not have to take the interceptor component out itself. And you've got the 4 on the bottom and then 2 on the side, so that works really, really well. They do supply some protective covering for your wiring. One thing to note, and I did speak to the guys when I purchased this is very sensitive, so no kinking, bending, anything like that, as you will potentially damage the internals of that wiring, much like a transducer, I suppose. But he did just mention that it was something to be mindful of when installing. We've decided that we're just going to run straight up through here, and we've just basically mirror image both sides. Plenty of room in the back, there's nothing behind there, so we've checked all that, but we're going to jump and have a quick little look. We're going to mount the distribution unit, and we may use sections of this if we can as we come up, just to protect it below waterline. But as the shape of the transom here, it's just not going to look overly that good, so we might put some conduiting or something on it later on. We'll just jump up and have a quick little squiz. So one thing to note, and something I was speaking to a buddy about, was you really, although they are quite waterproof, you really want to make sure that you're getting those out of the elements, because that's where probably your problems will start. And also bending the cables. Other than that, you're pretty good to go. So we've decided that we're going to pop that one straight up in here on the side, and that's going to sit there, and we're going to run all the wiring through into here, which is going to be, once it's in there, it's going to be completely out of the way, and we'll just tie that up straight through to the isolation switch for that side of the house. Pretty straightforward. And then on the helm, we've commandeered a bit of real estate here. That's where that control unit's going to be mounted. Had a bit of a play around. I always like testing things out and just making sure that you're going to be happy with that. I like to keep it in flush in line with the bottom of the sounder. Still leaves a bit of real estate for something else later on if needed. I did consider it down here, but I think, you know, when you look, you want to see that control panel as you go. So I think that's a really good spot for that one. And just double checking there's nothing behind there. One thing that we did note, and we had to look into it, there's a fair few plugins on the back of here. The ignition switch, so there's on the back of the Yamaha one, there'll be a fair few free ports. So we'll just run one straight to that. That's basically just gonna, as you plug that fella in, it's gonna only come on when the ignition comes on. So it's gonna be something to be mindful of. So just check the back of your switch panel there, and you'll probably see a spare few kicking around. And then we just get the plug-in straight from the distribution unit. These other options here are optional extras, like the GPS one. If you're not, this has got an inbuilt GPS. If you're not getting a good signal through there, you can opt for the optional one, which will mount on the back, like the old school sounders and stuff have, or like a Min encoder. And then you've got some plugins as well for connectivity straight through into your sounder and so on. But we're not too worried about that because we've got the real estate for that, so that's just going to be fine. And that's part of the standard kit. So that's where we're up to, and we're just going to get into work and mount all this stuff up, and we'll check in a little bit. So we're just having to use the multi-grips on a screw, and the screw is actually forming the thread into the backing plate, because when they supplied the kit, they actually only supplied screws, not bolts. So the kit must have been for fiberglass boats, probably not plate boats. So we actually are having to manually form that thread. But that's the first one done on the... So we're at the stage now of installing our first interceptor on the port side. We've just drilled the holes, used the template, very straightforward and easy to do. The only thing to note was they do recommend a 5mm drill bit. And the way these screws are, the screws they supply are quite a coarse thread, so you obviously can't get a tap kit for that. So it was quite tedious to get that through and keeping it within that 5mm pilot hole size, or the drill bit size. And that's something to consider, that it is time consuming when you're dealing with plate. And if you were to step up to a 5.5mm bit, you'd be losing quite a significant amount of thread strength. So it does pay to just persevere with that and to make sure that you get all 6 in properly. We just used a bit of cutting fluid, and in the way we went, just mechanically, so that we weren't sort of stripping or breaking any screws in the process. We've now sanded the surface area and just cleaned off this leading bottom edge down here, just because that's where it recommends applying a nice bead of Sikaflex or marine silicone. And we are going to apply it on the screw holes, although that's really for a through hole design. This is just a backing plate or a mounting plate, so doesn't really affect us too much as far as water getting into the hull, but it is good, just extra strength in there as well, and a bit of a bond too as well. And I am going to put in there the Tef Gel stuff, which is a sort of copper grease you could use just to stop some of that electrolysis or corrosion throughout the screw holes when you're dealing with stainless and aluminium. That's all prepped and ready to mount the first one. Alrighty, so we've just finished installing the Interceptors on the 2150 Supercab, in which it was the 300S kit from Zipwake. We'll just run you through the finished product. So we've got Interceptors both at starboard and port side. We had to muck around with a bit of real estate with the transducers, in which we haven't tested those yet to see how they're going to perform. They can be a bit fiddly, but just as an example point of view, that's the install there. We've just run the cabling up and we've used the cabling protector guide stuff, just trying to limit the amount of screws we screw in. That's plenty. It was quite easy to do as far as these things come apart, and the torque settings stuff are all listed on that diagram. A little bit of silicone on the outside, Sikaflex that we've ran around and just cut off once that's cured. And in the middle of this, when this module's apart, is you just don't want to put any Sikaflex behind the actual motor itself. So just something to be mindful of. But yeah, it's come up really good. The stencils that they provided were really quite accurate. We've allowed about 5 mil from the bottom of the hull to where the Interceptors have been mounted. This is mirror imaged on the other side, and we've pushed them out as far as we could go on that mounting plate. And that works really well for us because we've got this type of hull design. So yet to test them. It's going to become in the next part 3 of this video. But that's the Interceptors on the back of the boat. We've ran the cabling up and through into here. There's plenty of room in there just to keep that cabling out of harm's way. One thing to note is that the cabling is quite sensitive, and it was mentioned to me by Rob when I purchased these. One of the biggest issues that he's seen in the past is that people pull that cabling too tight or do the zip ties too tight, in which they damage some of that. There's still quite a number of wires inside there. So if you are pulling this stuff through, just be delicate with it. We certainly were. They're working fine. We can show you guys that in a little bit, but yeah, that's the mounting, both sides. Yeah, all the way through. Try to do it as neat as we could go. The transducers that we already have, just as part of, we've already spent the money on that stuff, so it's good to utilize that stuff. But we'll jump in now, and I'll just show you where we've mounted that Interceptor module and how that control panel turned out. There's a couple of key points on that I'd like to share with you guys as well. We've just jumped in just to show you how we've configured the wiring setup and where we've mounted things. And a couple of points that I would note is on that Interceptor module, which I'll show you here. I did mention that it was recommended to up underneath in here, out of the weather. That is one thing that was also mentioned, which is a good point to take home, is just make sure it's not getting directly wet if possible. Just sort of increases that long-term longevity of that. So I played around and put it in up the back underneath here. And I've just ran that wiring through the main isolation switch, which is up and over here. So when I kill that, it kills all power to everything. So it's a good point to have. I didn't put that directly on, and then it's going to be drawing power at another time. This cabling in here, the cabling that does come with that, the brains behind the operation, isn't actually that long. I think it's about 3 meters long. So there'd be no real possibility unless you wanted to extend that to mount it up further around the helm, sort of around that area. So it is good to have it at the back. It was just a point when we were unpackaging earlier, and I thought I'd share with you. It has worked out really well. I've fed all cabling and conduiting. I think that's going to be just to give it a bit of extra protection as it runs up through the gunner walls and all the way to the module, the control module itself. Yeah, so it's come up really well. Everything's tucked out of the way. A little bit of fiddling around, as you can expect. In doing it right the first time is really good, so that you don't have to deal with that sort of stuff later on, or any loose wires hanging around and stuff like that. Connections, you just need to get a couple connections just to connect through into your earth wire and your isolator switch. They didn't provide those as part of the kit. They may have them in other kits, so we might have just missed out, but it's something to note. We didn't have any on board, so we've just had to purchase those and crimp them up ourselves. But other than that, all good. So we just thought we'd show you inside when we've installed this control panel. Very straightforward. Again, this whole kit's been really easy to do. Awesome. So we just thought we'd show you the in behind the scenes here, installing the control module on the helm. It's a 76mm hole saw bit. Very easy to do. Basically, once you punch the hole saw bit, you've got 4 mounting screws either side. With all screws in the aluminium boat, we've used that Tef gel just to prevent any corrosion with stainless and aluminium as the best as we can. It's just basically one plug, and that just runs straight back to the Interceptor. You can, and it is recommended, if you have space off your wire and ignition switch, just to power in that there's a little port on the other side that basically is, as you turn the switch on, it will turn the device on and then turn it off and the like. I haven't gone with that option. I'm just going to manually turn that off here and there. The reason being, for me, I didn't have any space left. I've got enough accessories running off that already. And I just thought, look, I'm happy with just manually doing that, having manual control over that. But it is something, if you would like to power that through, so that as soon as you turn the switch, you've got power to the control module and the device, it will do that. So that's pretty much the 2 ports. It does have a lot of other plug-ins as well for those other accessories like the squid light or the rear lights that you can get, and that other interface module. If you want to run both to your sounder and things like that, you can plug all that other stuff into it. But it's just worth noting that. So I'll just get that a quick little look. Very straightforward, one cable all the way back. This is a 6.4 meter boat. So there was excess from the helm, which is probably about 4 meters or so. I still had about a meter or so of play. So just something to work into. Just check out how long you need that cable to be. You may have to buy an extension as part of the kit. All right, last but least, this is the control panel, which we've mounted just in line with the existing sounder. As we mentioned in part 1 of this video, we did have a bit of real estate, so we're happy with just the basic kit. Once it's been mounted, once that plugs straight in and you've powered on through your Interceptor module itself at the back, it's just pretty straightforward. Got one power button. As I mentioned previously, we've just decided manual power, so I can just turn that on and off. When you turn these on, you'll hear them do a little bit of a test, and there is a manual calibration test just to see how things look. It does have a night mode and day mode as well. I've got it in the night mode at the moment, being the red light, and it will get a GPS fix. Now, we're underneath the carport here, and it's inside an aluminium cab, and it's still searching for the signal, but it does find it, and we don't have any problems that I've seen so far. So when we hit the water on the next part 3 of this video, we're going to go through the setup, how hard it is to suit this to your boat. There is some parameters inside that you do have to set. Once you've got that set up, it will memorize that, and you shouldn't have any problems from there on. And we'll just test it. We'll see how that's performing, if we've got any gains, and then over the course of a few months, we might do a follow-up video in which we'll be able to sort of say if we've got any extra fuel mileage and things like that as well. So that's a bit of a finish to the video. Overall, easy to do.